Okay, so this is going to be kind of excruciating because I'm going to stop the video every couple of seconds, but hang with me. So again, we're talking about match on action. Okay, so this is editing specifically made to, or specifically put together to make it appear like action is fluid. So here we go. We have, you can see right here, this is Jimmy Stewart, one of the most famous actors of his time, the Brad Pitt of his time, jumping from right to left, just like he should, because they're following the 180-degree rule. And we're going to watch them edit together some footage that makes it appear as if he's dangling off the side of a building, which we absolutely 100% know that Jimmy Stewart was not hanging off the side of a building because he was one of the most prominent, famous actors in the world, and they would never dangle him, 300 feet above the ground. So here we go. And that you saw a cut there. He jumped, and then there was a cut to do from a mid shot of him to a more of a close-up of him, and he's sliding down the side of the building. And here we go. Oh, match on action again. Now he's hanging from the gutter, and you can see San Francisco in the background. And now there we go. Oops, missed that one, but it was a close-up of his face. And then we see the cops and the fugitive here running in the background. So it makes it seem like it's all happening at the same time. And the cop turns around, goes back to the right. We have a close-up again of Jimmy Stewart's face. And then we have, this is called an eyeline match. We just saw a close-up of Jimmy Stewart's eyes. And then we see this image of looking down at the ground, so that we're supposed to be convinced that this is what the actor is looking at. What we know in our minds is that he's standing on a mattress in a sound studio in California filming this, but because this footage was put together, we're convinced mentally as audience members that he's in danger, okay? So we've got match on action and we have eyeline match going on at the same time. So here we go. We see the vertigo. We see Jimmy Stewart again. And here we see the officer. He's coming down from the left to the right. Again, coming back to him. We see Jimmy Stewart. We see the ground. We see Jimmy Stewart. Eyeline match. And then we see the cop. Now, what's really interesting here, I think, is that you see Jimmy Stewart look up, and we know he's hanging from the gutter. And he cannot see the policeman's face from where he is hanging. But nevertheless, because of the way that the editing is put together, because of the way that the cinematographic shots are put together, we are convinced mentally that Jimmy Stewart can look into the policeman's face, which is physically impossible considering where he is hanging from the gutter. But this is what editing does. This is what reality TV shows do to us. I love this, to see how editing convinces us to believe things that we know we should not believe. So here we go again. The policeman is looking at Jimmy Stewart, whom he could not see because he's hanging off of a gutter. But here we go again. And there we are. We see Jimmy Stewart. Oh, and then we see the policeman start to fall from the roof. And now we're going to see him pass behind Jimmy Stewart. And then we see Jimmy Stewart look down. And eyeline match. There is the policeman falling to his death. Again, we know that the actor is not falling to his death. But because of the editing, because of the series of images that show the police officer falling from the left to the right and then down, we are convinced mentally, visually, that this is what's happening. And there he goes. Jimmy Stewart close up on his eyes. Eyeline match again. There we see the officer on the ground. And this is the end of the scene. And this is the way in which editing convinces us to believe things that we know that we should not literally believe. And this is what I find completely fascinating. All right, so here we saw an establishing shot of the robber's hands coming up, then the reestablishing shot that showed us that we were in LA. We saw the cut-in and the cutaway. where we had where the camera moved in on specific parts of the action. Also eyeline match and match on action. Now, next, what I want to show you is some shot reverse shot. Shot reverse shot is what's typically used in conversations in films. And a shot reverse shot goes back and forth between two characters. Again, follows the 180-degree rule and typically includes a character's shoulder. So it's over the shoulder so you can tell if they're going back and forth. Now what's important, again with the 180-degree rule, is that you'll see that this character is always on the right and her grandson that she's talking to is always on the left. Grandma's on the right. Grandson will be on the left here when we show him again. And this is, again, cinematography and editing work together. You have to line up the shots so that you have the characters framed either on the left or the right, and then you have to edit those series of shots together in such a way so that it appears continuous in time and in space. Again, the grandson always on the left, the grandma always on the right. This particular film is called Daughters of the Dust. It was filmed here off the coast of South Carolina, and follows some of the slave heritage of the Gullah Geechee persons who were brought here in enslavement to the United States. And if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to watch this film. It is fabulously beautiful and has a really compelling story. But again, notice how in the editing, they make sure that the cinematographer has kept the camera in the right, on the correct side of the actors, so that the grandson is on the left and the grandma is on the right. And as their conversation goes back and forth, and we have here a reestablishing shot to show that he's on the left, she's on the right, that we still keep them, as the editing goes forward, with her in the right side of the frame. See that? The editing, we're putting together various portions of footage, but the grandson stays on the left, the grandma stays on the right. And so the cinematographer and the editor really have to work together closely in order to make sure that we have this continuity between our shots and our scenes in the films that we watch. It's such a beautiful film. If you haven't seen it, please do watch it. Daughters of the Dust. Now, one thing that I absolutely adore, again, I'm a huge fan of editing, is cross-cutting. Now, cross-cutting is when you take two scenes, they're shot supposedly at the same time, but they're occurring in different spaces. And so they appear to be going on simultaneously and thus affecting one another in the narrative. Cross-cutting is one of my favorite things. This is The Manchurian Candidate, which was a 1950s film starring Frank Sinatra, but was redone about a decade ago with Liev Schreiber and Meryl Streep. And you'll see here that what we have is this political celebration that's going on here on the floor of the assembly room. And then up here in the rafters, we have a sniper played by Wesley Snipes. And you can see this. Okay, we're going to have racking focus here. Interesting. We have the gun. We have Wesley Snipes, zooming in. We have the view of the crosshairs down on the floor. We're down on the floor again. So you can see we're moving space, but temporally we're supposed to be in the same place at the same time. We're here, we have Liev Schreiber looking up in the rafters. That eyeline match makes us think that Liev Schreiber knows what's going on with the sniper. Then we have the close-up on the agent. We go back to Liev dancing with his mom, Meryl Streep, and they're down on the floor of the assembly hall. He looks up in the rafters again. We see the crosshairs. That eyeline match implicates him into the cross-cutting, what's going on in the rafters, that we have this sniper that's getting ready to shoot somebody. And again, down on the floor of the assembly hall, he smiles, He nods. The sniper, we go back to it, cross-cutting. We're in a different space, but we're led to believe this happening at the same time due to editing. Meryl Streep looks up confused. The sniper zeroes in, starts to shoot at Liev Schreiber's back. We see the crosshair and shoots him. So you can see how there is this, and mother and daughter, or mother and son are dead at the same time. So you can see how cross-cutting helps to raise tension. And I want you to pay attention to cross-cutting as you watch your various, whatever it is that you're watching, because it's awesome. Okay, now, elliptical editing. Elliptical editing is something that if you know the term for an ellipses. An ellipses, when you're writing, means that you have deleted something. Those are the 3 dots that you put into your writing when you've said, okay, there were words here that I've taken out, and I'm not going to use them right now. So elliptical editing, what it means is that it's editing that is supposed to connote the removal of time. So elliptical editing is typically used in a montage, and a montage is used to show in American films, typically, not in Russian films, but in American films, it's typically used to show the passage of time. So you can very quickly move through days or months or years through a montage, which uses elliptical editing. And here we're also going to see an example of a whip pan. So a pan is when the camera moves from left to right. A whip pan is when the camera moves from left to right so quickly that the image in front of the camera blurs, and it's supposed to show the passing of time. So this is a very famous scene from Citizen Kane. If you haven't seen Citizen Kane, you should watch it. It's one of the #1 movies ever made in the United States. And this is a scene that shows the evolution or the de-evolution of a couple's marriage. This is Kane and his wife. And you can see from this montage that's about ready to start here in a second that the couple's relationship is going downhill. Where we start here in just a second is their, like the breakfast after they've just gotten married, and they've, obviously have had conjugal relations together, and they're very happy with one another. And here we have this is an establishing shot with the beautiful bride on the right, the groom on the left. You will again see that they maintain their sides of the screen. Kane stays on the left, his wife stays on the right. But as the years pass, we can see a change in the mise-en-scène as they age. And then we also see a change in how they react to each other. Here we have a reverse shot for the conversation. He's on the left, she's on the right. Again, this is the cinematographer and the editor working together very closely, and they're having a conversation. It's like watching a tennis match. You go back and forth from left to right. There's a whip pan. Passage of time. She's a little older, still on the right. He's on the left. The mise-en-scène, now there is a floral arrangement between them. She looks a little frumpier. He looks a little dowdier. But still, again, the conversation editing. Whip pan. There we go. Now she looks a little older. He looks a little older. They're angry at each other. Still a floral arrangement between them, showing the barrier. We still have mid-level shots of them, medium shots of them, but we're going back and forth. Shot, reverse shot to show the conversation. But we're seeing the passage of time. Here comes another whip pan in just a second. So again, there we go. Passage of time. She looks even older. The mise-en-scène really helps this because we know mentally that these shots were filmed probably in the same day, if not the same week on a studio lot, but we're supposed to think they're getting older and older. So this kind of editing, this kind of cinematography, this kind of mise-en-scène helps to convince us that time is passing. This is a montage of we see passing time. Now we have the reestablishing shot. They're backing away. We get the long shot, and we see that they're on opposite sides of the same table. Okay. All right. We're going to close down this video, And I'll be back in just a minute with more information on editing and elliptical editing.